How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the bring to you is going to be where to hand trap. And now I've been really trying to push these out because with nationals coming up in America, it's so important to realize that, we have such an advantage right now. We're seeing so many different nationals happening. So we're seeing deck lists, we're seeing tech cards, theory, options, which is great. But there's also going to be a huge shift in our metagame because there's a lot of interesting things that are happening right now. And we can't always guarantee that we're going to see these at the NAWCQ, but I want to report on them so that you know what's happening and you have a really good idea going into the event about what the new tech cards are, what the new options are, and how to counter them. So if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over in RW, Cloud Gem, Arla, Imperium, Dragonshield, and Grimoire, definitely go ahead and do so all down below in the description. But also subscribe to the channel for more educational content. We're trying to hit 30,000 by the end of the year, and I'd really appreciate it. It's going to be such a cool celebration. I'm very excited for this goal. And, I make these videos because I want to make sure that you are all as educated as possible into the format. And I know a lot of you don't have, ample time to sit on DB for 6 to 8 hours a day, right? It's just not really something that is a huge option for many people. And I like to just do that myself and then report on what I find and from tournaments and just from theory and knowledge. So I do hope that you enjoy these videos, and this is going to be a really important one because this is as up to date as I can get you as possible at the moment. So subscribe and let's hop into where to hand trap. Now, this is extremely important. I do not want to hear of anyone getting cheated by Heraldic Beast. You need to know these two very important lines, and they're in a lot of the Heraldic cards, but especially Griffin. This deck, all in all, needs to start with X, or else this deck is just not going to do a whole lot. If you see your opponent normal summon Ice and you know they're on Heraldic cards, their end board is going to be horrendously bad. This is so important because once they use the Griffin, this is extremely, extremely good to know. You can only use monsters that are Heraldic Beasts or number monsters as their original names for Xyz material. You can treat this as 2 materials for an Xyz summon of a number monster. So they can't summon like Duo Drive or Ouroboros. They have to summon like Heraldic Crest, right? So this is how your opponent's going to try ripping cards out of your hand, but these are 2 very important lines that you need to know. That also severely impacts how we hand trap this deck. So, you want to Ash Bonfire or Tachyon, you do not want your opponent getting to X. Again, if they start with Ice, that's fine, because their end board is about to be horrendous. You need to summon Whale in this build, and if you cannot summon Whale, then you have to, get it to your hand, pitch it, and bring it back with Dugaris, and at that point, I'm either crowing the Whale out of the graveyard so they can't bring it back, or I'm just belling the effect of Dugaris to bring it back. Whatever you can do to keep the Whale off the board is really important. So this is going to be a very definitive thing. If you see your opponent normal Ice, you know they're on Heraldics, they have a horrible end board coming unless they can make Dugaris and get it back. If they're summoning the Whale, it means they probably started with X and they're going to be able to do the full combo. So make sure that you keep your opponent away from X by Ashing Bonfire, Tachyon if they start those. You can also just go after the Duo Drive if you want, but there's a lot of lists right now that are not playing Node, Star, or Cross, especially Heraldic lists. So that's something where not all of them are going to be like that, but there's going to be an upwards trend right now of people not playing those cards. So there's less of a potency to stop the Duo Drive and more to stop the access to X. And if you can't do that, stop the Whale. You want to stop the Whale. The card is very good. So Valor Imperium on the Whale is going to be excellent. It's something that we really want to do. You also can Bell the Heraldic Art. So the Whale, when you banish it to go ahead and summon 2, it summons them, not both. So you want to Bell this card or preemptively Crow before they use the effect because you don't want your opponent to get the free summons. But you can Crow one of the monsters when your opponent activates Heraldic Art because it has to summon both. So if you get rid of one, they can't summon either, which is really important. The next one up here is Memento. Now, this has severely changed in my testing. I've been grinding Memento, just playing the deck over and over. And there's a couple things that I do know have changed in hand trapping the deck. So, number one is you want to stop the Creation King from dumping 3. They also can't chain the second effect to pop when they're using the first effect to dump. It's only 1 effect per chain. So, that's really important too. So, if your opponent goes Creation King to dump, I'm Ashing, Valoring, Imperium, do whatever you need to do to just go ahead and stop this. The dump 3 is extremely important for the deck. You wanted to stop this card at all means. You can Ogre the field spell so they don't get the set in the end phase, which is really important too. I don't like that. You don't want your opponent getting a lot of advantage, or when they blow something up and try to bring it back, but usually it's going to be chain blocked. Bell onto Fusion because it has the potential to shuffle back, so you want to make sure that you cut this avenue off. This card's very good and you want to shut it off as soon as possible. Now, DD Crow is going to depend. If your opponent has already used Akihiron to add something back, then absolutely before you see Combined Creation hit the board, Crow Combined Creation, they can't get it back this turn, is going to be a huge problem for your opponent. If they have not already used Akihiron, I might go ahead and Crow Akihiron when it tries to summon out to the board, because your opponent's going to try to get something back like Memento Fusion to get it back to their hand. So it does make for another very awkward game state if you go ahead and just Crow the Akihiron. And again, this is going to be cut off if you go ahead and just Ash or Valor Imprim the Creation King, because this is where they get to just send 3 for free and then get a lot of free advantage. So stop this card at all means necessary, Bell the Fusion, and then if they've already used Akihiron, just banish Combined Creation. Now, there's a ton of Raimitsu lists lately that have been topping that all cut Imprim in favor of things like pre-prep, and if they're playing pre-prep, usually they're not on 7th Tachyon. So a lot of big changes coming in lately that we really want to be aware of. And, you know, Bell or Ash on pre-prep, because they can add from grave as well, so Bell is an option, is going to be a really solid one, because again, your opponent gets so much value off of this. Even if you draw them, then they still get to summon quite a bit, right? So that's a problem. But if you do see your opponent going ahead and tributing off their Mitsurugi Mirakumo, then you could just Bell this. Or if they go like Purification Tribute Mirakumo and they want to go ahead and just like nuke your board in a new chain link, you can Crow the Mirakumo because it's been tributed for cost. So it won't even get an activation in the new window because it won't be in the same location if you move it from grave to banished. So you can either Bell this card when it's trying to come back, or you can Crow it, or you can Ash it. That's another thing too, because they are trying to search. Where I've definitely done this to my opponent, where they like tributed their Futso and try to bring back Futso, and then I'll just go ahead and just Ash it, Bell it, Crow it, make sure that your opponent can't bring it back, right? Futso is going to be very common now. Futso made its way back into the list, so that's going to be a card that you really want to be aware of. But if you go ahead and just worry about the Mirakumo and make sure this card doesn't make it back, make sure that you banish it to a new location so they don't even get the option to bring it back, or just make sure that if it's on its way back that you just Bell or Ash it. This is going to be the most impactful. There's a lot of Raimitsu lists right now that are playing heavier Mitsu packages than they are Rai packages. You still want to Ogre, Valor Imprim, the Duo Drive. This is still going to be really important, but there is going to be a heavier emphasis on the Mitsu cards than there is the Rai cards. Now, if you haven't already seen my Gem Knight video, definitely go ahead and watch it, but this is going to be really important as well, because this deck will be at the event, and this is something that you really want to know what it does. So, Nephrim is a new card that's insane. If they send it from their hand to the graveyard or like deck to grave, make sure that you were like crowing this card out of the grave so they can't bring it back, you're belling it so it can't come back, you're ashing the effect on summon, you're Valor Impriming the effect on summon. This is like what makes the deck go right now. The card is very strong. But you also want to go ahead and hit the Phantom Quartz, because that card is like really solid. It's the way back to the other spell card to go ahead and add or fuse, which is really good. It's the Dispersion spell card. It's worded like MitsuRy Ritual as well, so they can do both, but only one per copy of the card, right? So, very important to go ahead and just shut off Phantom Quartz, but the entire way to just get started in this deck is going to be Nephrim, so make sure that you stop Nephrim. But if your opponent uses Dispersion to try to summon back 3, they can either summon from extra deck or graveyard. Bell this. If they have another fusion on board, and they have the Hollow Core engraved, then they can just go ahead and negate the Bell anyways, which really does suck. But if they're just tributing off of the Dispersion and then trying to summon 3, I'm belling this all day long. But if my opponent's just trying to get started and they're trying to bring back Nephrim or use Nephrim, I'm probably just negating that all day. You can Lancia this deck if you have nothing else, just because they can't loop things like Gem Knight Fusion or Protoss you, which Protoss is really popular in this deck. You want to make sure that you don't get Protoss. And just in general right now, everyone's siding in Protoss in like every deck right now, so make sure that you are aware of that. That card is very scary. The other thing too is you can always go ahead and DD Crow the Gem Knight Fusion, just because they will loop it in the combo, but it's almost just way more important to go ahead and to stop Nephrim at all means necessary, because again, this is what makes the deck go now. This is like the most important card in the deck. MitsuOrcust, this deck is always going to be really fun. It's a really good deck to play. I really like to play it online right now, but it is really annoying to play against because you can droll this deck or you can Lancia this deck, and they'll still play on both sides, right? So you can DD Crow the target of Symbol Skeleton, which is usually just like Ding Gearsu, right? So you can save Crow for your own turn and then try to go ahead and banish it, but it's also really interesting because if they have like Crescendo or they have Purification, then it's gonna be a lot harder, so you want to use it on your opponent's turn. But whatever the target of the Symbol Skeleton is, usually a pretty good go-to spot for DD Crow. You also want to Valor Imperm the Girsu. This card is very strong. If I have the opportunity, I might just go ahead and hit the Galatea if I don't see Girsu come out at all. But if my opponent has Girsu on the board and they go like Harpor or something Girsu, I'm stopping this card all day long. This card is the scariest card in this deck, and I do not want this card to go off because just one Girsu alone does way too much. Way too much. And we've already seen it before where it wasn't really that scary, but now that it's in a really viable deck, this is something that you want to stop. The card is horrifying to play against because it does so much. But you want to Ash the Harpor. Of course, this is going to be really good. But if my opponent goes Habakiri, Pitch Saji effect, I'm just Ashing that. I don't want my opponent to get any Mitsu cards online. I'd rather just deal with Orcust cards, right? So this is definitely going to be like the first and foremost thing off the Habakiri. And you don't want to Ash the Habakiri in case they just have like Saji anyway, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that I Ash the Saji, so my opponent doesn't have the opportunity to add a ritual spell. And then Bell onto the Symbol Skeleton target is fine, but I'm usually just waiting for the Mirakumo, because again, that's going to be the scariest part about most end boards right now. You just want to stop this from wrecking your board and being a problem, right? And then as for Maliss, you want to Valor Imperm the first name. If they go Chessie effect off the first summon, or like normal Dormouse effect, I'm just stopping that because you kind of have to high roll this deck. This deck is the best going first deck in the game, so you want to make sure that you just stop them early if you can, because if you don't, then it's going to be a rough game to play. So again, first summon a Chessie or like Dormouse, I'm stopping it immediately. And then you want to Ogre the Link 2, whatever the Link 2 is, just because you want to stop your opponent from having bodies on board. You can Ash the effect of Chessie when they summon it and try to use the effect to like banish and draw, which is fine. I don't hate that. You also can just Ash the White Binder to keep it banished because a lot of people aren't playing GWC, or it's like a post side card. So now if you Ash the White Binder, it hurts way more. Bell onto the field spell is just an extender, so if you have like Bell and a Handtrap, usually you can just end their turn. You can always Bell the effect of White Binder when it's summoned to go ahead and banish other cards, which is really good too. But I really do like Belling the Underground, just because if I have like Bell Imperm or like Bell Ash, I know that I probably just won the game anyway. So it's something that you can consider, but it's something that I definitely recommend. And then DD Crow definitely depends on where you want to hit, right? So if you are in a situation where you're looking pretty okay, then your opponent summons the Accode, I might just go ahead and go Chain Crow Banish Binder, because by the Accode summon, they've probably already banished Binder, and if they have, all day, I'm just crowing the Binder out of the grave, because at that point, it's really hard for them to get back, right? There's not really many people right now just playing GWC. A lot of them are just playing MTP 07 in the main deck, and that's it. So if you have DD Crow, sometimes it can be very potent. You also can like chain if there's a target on like Wizard, right, and you don't want that to come out. But most of the time, this is going to be a very low impact hand trap. But after Accode and they already use Binder, it could turn into a very high impact hand trap real quick. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and if you haven't already checked out my Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and Instagram, definitely go ahead and do so. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope to see you all at Nationals. Thank you all so much.